What are your views on the current job market and the impact it has on society?
That's a good question. Um, well, as everybody kind of knows, the job market's pretty bad right now. The unemployment 10%, 1 out of 10 people is out of work, and that's a national figure. So it could be very much higher regionally, especially hard-hit regions like in the Midwest, automobile manufacturing, so on and so forth. So it's really probably the worst time we've seen since the Great Depression in terms of people being out of work. So with 1 in 10 on average around the country, and in many places having a much higher unemployment rate than that, there's a lot of people out of work, a lot of people not making money, not making a living. So it's probably one of the worst economies we've seen around there.
How has the economic shift changed homelessness in America?
Well, you know, when we talked about, I had an article from the Hartford Courant, which was from earlier in September, but I don't think it's really changed much since then. Talks about what's really kind of to me, amazing figure. That almost 1 out of 7 people in the country are below the poverty rate right now. So clearly, this kind of severe economic downturn, recession that we're in, it pushes a lot of people into the poverty range. So poverty, the amount of people living in poverty right now is growing, and a number like 1 out of 7%, and the number they have is almost 13%. That's very high. It's a very high number for people in poverty in a country that you'd think is, again, powerful, abundant country. To think that almost 1 in 7 people are living below the poverty level is pretty amazing. And again, just goes to show you how deep this recession is a problem has been.
Do you see this problem going away anytime soon, or at least getting better?
Well, you know, Thursday is a big day, because Thursday government comes out with their GDP, gross domestic product numbers. That's the total output of the economy. And that's going to be very important to see if that goes positive, because it's been negative for almost a year. It's been negative for almost a whole year, meaning the total output of the economy is dropping. A happiness index, if you want to call it that, has been dropping for this time. So a lot of people are going to be very anxious to see what happens on Thursday. The general idea is that it will go up, not a lot, but at least we'll get into positive growth range, which is a really good signal for the future. You know, we've turned around the curve, and we got through the bottom, the worst of things, and as far as output, it's starting to go up, and that's what we're hoping to see on Thursday. But most economists are thinking that the GDP, the total output of the economy, is going to start to turn positive, and if that maintains throughout early next year, then we can officially say that we're out of this big depression or recession that we've been in.
What is the minimum salary someone can live off of?
I got your question on that, and the general, now the actual, you know, you can ask, well, what do you think is the, but as economists, we kind of like to go with the official figures, the government figures. And in fact, the government, the U.S. Census Bureau puts out poverty thresholds, which they feel, which the government feels is the minimum to live on. And that relates to a lot of things. It relates to these numbers that we see. It relates to relief that people get, unemployment and welfare payments, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll say for the average family, because they break it down between size of family, et cetera. For the average people, let's say 4 people, 2 adults and two children, the poverty level right now, 2009, is about $22,000 a year. So that's kind of what the U.S. Census Bureau says is the sort of the official poverty level. How much it takes for an individual to live, you know, whether that's too much or too little, that's a hard thing, and you can debate that as to how much. But in general, the government says a family of 4 earning below $22,000 a year is in poverty level, and that's what what that 1 in almost 7 number refers to, below that poverty level. I think that's an amazing number, because in this day and age, when you think about it, you barely get a really decent car for $22,000, or you think of your living expenses. It's kind of, again, it makes that almost 1 in 7 number earning below poverty level. That makes it even a more scary number.
Do you foresee an even greater decline in employment before it can increase again? Or do you feel that it can and will go up from here?
Well, I think it can and will go up. from here. I think 10% is about rock bottom. Maybe just a little more, maybe something seasonal, because we're coming up with the Christmas season, which has a big effect. But I think me and most economists think that we're probably at the bottom with employment. But that's the good news. The bad news is that employment always lags behind the GDP. So I said the GDP growth, likely we're going to see third quarter numbers on Thursday that'll say GDP growth is increasing. That's the good news. The bad news is it's going to take time to get workers back in the workforce. So we're probably not going to go much lower, but to get back up to a reasonable level of 4 or 5%, cut it in half, it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while. So the poverty issue, the employment issue, unemployment issue is not going to go away really quickly. So good news and bad news. Good news is I think we've hit bottom. Most economists are saying that. The bad news is it's going to take some time for the economy to recover, to get all those jobs that it lost, to try to get them back in the economy. And that's concerning some people. Is it going to take 2 months, 6 months, another year? That's going to be the big question.
Would you say that the economy is reflective of our leaders or citizens' lack of motivation?
I definitely wouldn't say it's a lack of motivation, right? Because I don't think anybody sees a recession as an excuse not to work. Nobody. It's certainly not an excuse to go below $22,000 a year for family of 4, right? Because how can you live on that? How can you make a future on that amount of money? As far as leadership, I don't know. A lot of times the government tries to please everybody, and when you the more people you try to please, the more potential is for something to go wrong. So you can try to subsidize mortgages, low-income mortgages, or maybe give mortgages to people that may not be able to afford it in the longer term, and then also you have the problem that a lot of mortgages go bad. So a lot of times our interest rates can go up, and the government believes interest rates go up to try to secure inflation that they feel might be coming as the economy recovers. That could put a damper on investment, business spending, and hurt jobs in the long run. So I don't think it's that politicians don't want to do much. It's maybe they want to do too much. And when they start trying to do too much, economy is very complex, and they start kind of tripping over their feet. So I think the intentions are definitely good, but we have to be very careful about choosing what kind of policy we use to kind of try to get us out of this hole. Not just for now, because we got through the depression, we got through every decade has had its big recession in it. The question is how do we get rid of these? Because not so much that the 1 in 7 people, because that'll get lower as the economy recovers, right? Oh, great! More people will go out of the poverty level as the economy will come out of the poverty level. But what about the next time? So who wants to be living at an uncertain level? Whether just a little tip in the economy is going to push me into the poverty level, with health insurance, with keeping my job, with sending the kids to college and things like that. So I think it's not so much about maybe now, if this thing really is getting better as everybody hopes, it's more about now, how do we get our leaders to think not just 2 or 4 years or even 8 years ahead of time, the time that they're in office, is how do we get them to think 10 or 20 years down the road. So I think that might be the biggest issue, is how do we all, not just the leaders, but how do we all get together and try to make sure the economy sails smoothly for the next 10 or 20 years.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.